Here we go. There we go. I got a level now. Yeah. All right. Now we're cooking with gay ass. Good morning. Welcome to 15 Minutes of Flame, your morning cup of reality that I provide 3 days a week here. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We have the Friday Farcast. And then on Sunday night Astro Live. I was talking about just kind of some house business today. I was talking about subscription and what you can do if you want to support the show. If you go to robertphoenix.com, in the right column, which is what they call the widget column on the home page, right near the top, there is a subscription option where you can actually subscribe to this program and to the other work that I do. So essentially, what we have is we have three tiers. We have Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter, also known as Jove. And for the Mercury level, which is $5 a month, it's just a straight subscription, and you can help out and support the show that way. For $10 a month, you get a 365-day report astrologically. So you're getting a yearly report, and I'm putting together a series of webinars, and you'll be able to attend one webinar for free. All right, so it's on. So you're supporting the show, you're getting a webinar, and you're getting the 360-day report, which is a pretty good thing, right? But and again, it's all conscience based. It's all conscience based, meaning that you sign up, and hopefully you're here for a while and partake. And then the third tier is that you're going to get to attend two webinars, and you get the 360. That's the $20 a month option. And that's over on robertphoenix.com. And it's on the right-hand column, the right-hand side of the site. And I'll put up a page today where it'll go into more detail, but I just wanted to get something up because I talked about it yesterday. But, the internet is such a weird thing. It's just I don't, sometimes the internet blows my mind in a good way and in a befuddling way. So here's Get Off the Lawn guy coming in. So I started this process a while ago to get the subscription thing up with a service called Subscribestar. I'm like, okay, they look pretty good, pretty straightforward, very minimal fees, et cetera, et cetera. And I started that a long time ago. Like I started that back in December. And they said, well, we have a lot of people that are signing up, and we're kind of overwhelmed by the amount of people that are signing up for our model. So it'll take us a while. Well, I just heard back from them 2 days ago, and it was not approved. Excuse me. Instead, what they asked for was they asked for kind of more proof of who I was. Oh, we searched, we couldn't find any presence of you on the internet. I'm like, okay. I've only been doing this now since 2009. I only have two YouTube channels, one of which, by the way, the 11th House channel is like close to 2 million views. Think about that. Close to 2 million views. Now this channel, not as many views. I've only had like 140,000 views on this channel. And this channel's been around since roughly 2013, 2014, late 2013, beginning 2014. So it's kind of odd, don't you think? I think it's very odd. Anyway, they said, well, we need more proof of who you are. And basically, you got to be kidding me. I mean, it's their business, and maybe they're looking in the wrong place. So I just said, fuck it. I'm just going to do this thing via PayPal. And PayPal has subscription options. So if you go to robertphoenix.com, you can sign up 5, 10, 20, and it's pretty straightforward. And I'll be busting out my webinar schedule this month, probably this weekend. And I plan on doing at least 6, possibly more. And for you people that signed up for the course over the holidays, and there were a number of you, And then some of you who signed up for the course, say the last 6 months, I'm going to be doing a couple of webinars so that you guys can just come in and ask me questions about astrology and clarification. That'll be a live thing, and I'm going to go through and figure out who signed up, and you'll get invites. I'll put it over on the 11th house page on Facebook as well. So it'll be good. It's not a free for all because I can't handle I can handle a fair amount of people through Zoom, which I do the webinars with, but I can't handle like 1,000 people, or maybe I could. I don't know. I'll have to find out. We'll see. But there are going to be a couple of freebies, and this is what I was talking about when I got people to become interested in the course and sign up for the course. So that's going to happen. That's separate from the webinars that I'm going to be doing. Those are going to be very specific webinars, and that'll be part of the subscription model that you'll be able to sign up with. RobertPhoenix.com. All right. Why don't we get into the business of the day? So why don't we start with a little humor? I'm all about humor. You know that I have a kind of an interesting sense of humor. And let me show you guys how kind of bizarre and absurd the reality that we're living in now. It's unfortunate, but this is one of the more disturbing symbols of today's reality. And I mean today, I mean like today, like right now today, as of 9:12 a.m. You guys see this shit? This is one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. But it also speaks to kind of where we are with this coronavirus thing. Check this out. So these are people who obviously they're Asian and more than likely Chinese. This is from Vancouver, and they've cut the bottoms of these water bottles, and they've got the masks on, and they've got the water bottle, and it must have some kind of a filter at the top. So these people are sufficiently freaked out. Now, is this a Devo kind of thing? I don't know. But the thing that's also disturbing about this is that they've been traveling. You can tell they've been traveling. You got a big suitcase here. Oh, this looks quite sanitary, whatever the fuck that is. So I just thought to myself, this is both kind of funny and very disturbing. Sort of like a Devo thing, don't you think? The ingenuity of humanity in the 11th hour. The other thing that's kind of disturbing about this is that they look like they're astronauts on an alien world. You know, that this is their spacesuit, and that we're now inhabiting some kind of alien terrain. I mean, this is what this is, very sort of not just symbolic. I mean, I guess it is symbolic, right? This is their space helmet. They're not going to be able to inhabit Earth, Terra. Quite bizarre, but in some ways quite indicative of where we are. Because apparently, the fashion du jour now, or the gear du jour in Wuhan and other parts of China, are hazmat suits. Yep, it's come down to that now. So if you're a worker and you're dealing with people in China, the face mask and the goggles, they're just not cutting it anymore. You got hazmat suits on. And so there's been this debate about, you know, whether or not the coronavirus is real, whether it's a scare, whether it's a plot to get us all vaccinated, you know, whether it's Bill Gates's doom bug. I think it's all the above. Actually, it's all of it. You got to wrap your arms around. I'm going to show you some stuff today that shows you where we're at and kind of how, in some ways, mission critical this thing is. This crossed my path this morning, and I'm just going to get the coronavirus stuff out of the way today, so that we can move on to So it's the Vancouver Courier. That's where I got this. Here's another here. I'll show you another image. Here's the Vancouver Courier. So this is in Vancouver, obviously British Columbia. That's an airport. That person's in a fucking airport. And look at these people. They're just smiling. Ha ha ha. Here's another woman with a mask. They're just smiling away. Now, it's also mind blowing about this. It's like even with all this, they're still on their fucking cell phone. And by the way, wear your gloves. I mean, if you're going to go the distance here, shouldn't you be wearing some kind of like surgical gloves to isolate and insulate yourself from whatever viral contaminant you're going to run across? It's like, it doesn't matter. You could be, and this is like 2 levels of like fisheye lens. Got the glasses, maybe goggles, and then the water bottle. And I mean, how can you read this? And the water bottle is ridged. So you have to tilt the water bottle so you're not peeking through the ridge so you can get your latest emojis. And there they are again. And while there are currently no vaccines available to protect you against human coronavirus infection, the CDC advises that you may be able to reduce your risk of infection by doing the following. Wash your hands often with soap. Avoid touching your eyes. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Nevertheless, let's see, the World Health Organization declared a global health emergency last week, while officials here have said Canadians are at low risk of contracting the illness. Nevertheless, experts stress the need to be vigilant and prepared for signs of infection if you have mild cold-like symptoms. So this is where it gets really touchy, right? If you have mild cold-like symptoms, you might freak out. Like I've been sneezing last couple of days. I got a little runny nose. I was like, oh shit. Am I dealing with the coronavirus? No, it's called cedar fever, and that's what I'm dealing with. So this is another part of this experience gets in your head, and this is the fear part, and this is what we have to really work with and do battle with in a lot of ways. All right, so you got the little humor, the dark humor out of the way today. Let's see what we have here. This is what I wanted to share with you guys. Oh, come on. This is a big deal now. We're in big boy land when I show you this, and this is significant. Okay, this is the economic impact of what China is going through. So here we go. So this is from CCN. China frantically shuts down stock market to prevent coronavirus sell-off. If this was a bioweapon aimed at China and weaken the Chinese position on trade and manufacturing, I'd say it's working. Chinese authorities have announced the stock market in Shanghai and Shenzhen will remain closed until next Monday as fears over coronavirus continue to swirl. But it may not be enough to stop a sell-off once markets reopen next week. This is a big deal, really big deal. Keep in mind that this is a ripple effect. And for a very long time, if the U.S. sneezed, and to some extent it still is in effect, if the U.S. economy sneezed or hiccuped or burped, the rest of the world would feel the ripple effect. It's like, so anything that was remotely tenuous or remotely flammable, that there would be an impact, a visceral, immediate impact in the markets. Now we're going to see what happens when China does the same thing, or in this case, much, much bigger. This is more than a sneeze or a belch or a hiccup. Let's continue to read here. Chinese authorities have decided to suspend trading on the Shanghai and Shenzhen stock exchanges. This move comes as the Wuhan coronavirus outbreak grows in size and severity. The government is kicking the can down the road. Investors can expect a massive correction when trading resumes next Monday. So essentially what that statement means is that they're they've put the market in hazmat. They've basically have put the emergency tape around their market, and people are just waiting for it to open so they can start selling off and getting their assets out of the market. This is a huge thing right now for China, because if their market starts to really bleed, it will crash. They're trying to figure out how to stop this hemorrhaging that's about to occur. And the hemorrhaging obviously is also a physical hemorrhaging, the hemorrhaging of the actual virus itself. And then there's the hemorrhaging of the stock markets. Now you can all say, oh, it's just a global operation. And, Xi and Trump, and they're all sitting around, drinking champagne at Davos and all that shit. I mean, maybe that's true. But at the end of the day, we've got to live with this, or we don't necessarily have to live with it, but we have to be aware of it, that these are the ramifications. And it gets down to this whole nature of reality thing. Oh, Kobe's dead. Kobe's not dead. Yeah, I had somebody comment on yesterday's show or 2 days ago. It was yesterday's show, that people fake their deaths all the time. That's true. It's true. People do fake their deaths. I could probably give you at least 3 or 4 instances of people that may not have died when they said they died. Jim Morrison comes right to the top. Possibly a few others. Yeah, it does happen. It certainly does happen. And there are people who die, and then we don't know that they die, and all of a sudden they're replaced. I mean, that happens both ways too. So we're living with this very strange kind of version of reality. Oh, nothing is real. Nothing is real. Nothing is real. Well, the paradoxical side of that is there are things that are real. There's some. I remember getting into kind of a small debate with this guy one time. And really, again, I've talked about this before. Very switched on, very enlightened guy. I think he considered himself a bit of a guru. And I liked him. He was a good dude, really good dude. But he had his, we all have our little quirks and ticks. And he said, none of this is real. None of this is real. It's all just an illusion. Oh, it's okay. So if I went downstairs and went in my car, which of course I didn't have it. I had a car, but it was just presupposition. Okay. And I went to my car and came up here with a revolver and blew your brains out. Would that be real? Right? Would it be real? I tell you, it'd be very real for me, because I'd wind up going to jail, and I'd have all these repercussions as a result of that. So, let's on some level, I get what he's saying. I totally get it. And he's right. Like, a lot of this is an illusion. A lot of this is a big illusion. But there are components of it that are quite real. And it's those components and subtraction with that quote unquote real angle of reality that makes this reality important. Like, there's a sticky nature to it, right? There's a sticky nature to being in the world. And that's where we evolve, and that's where we grow. We face our fears, we face our shadows, face our demons, face the stuff. And then we transcend that, we transform it, we begin to become more fluid and more able to navigate through reality, especially if we align ourselves with our true signal, which is the logos within each and every one of us. So it's quite easy now to be able to say, well, that's not real, because we've been conditioned. We've been conditioned to say, well, this is a hoax, and this is a fake, and this is fake news, fake, artificial, not real, bullshit. And when that happens, it becomes I think it's a slippery slope. And I'm not here to defend so-called reality, but I think we also have to really kind of navigate and go through this stuff and understand whether or not something has traction, like coronavirus. Does this have traction? You may not believe in it. You may believe that I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be okay no matter what. And that's a great mindset. And I think it's an essential mindset, because obviously that's going to be true. No matter what happens, you're going to be okay. If you're really okay with who you are, and you're really okay with your spirit, and you're really okay with so-called God, you're going to be fine with who you are and where you are, no matter what happens. And I think that's probably the ultimate place to be. And then there's the worldly side of this. Like, how does it impact you? How does it impact the people that you love or around? And maybe they don't share the same kind of ultimate reality, the separate reality that you've somehow managed to cultivate inside of yourself. I think that's the bigger question. We're going to be facing some of this stuff. We're going to be facing this end of world scenario in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying the world's going to end, but it's a scenario. And certainly we're going through a very different relationship with time. And I've been talking about this for a while. And as it relates to the Saturn cycle and the Pluto cycle and the nodal cycle, and this is the dissipation and the dissolution of time, and in a lot of ways, the end of time. The end of time as we know it, and quite possibly a new time that will emerge as a result of this. And that's all kind of baked in here as well. And then there are the other realities that get stacked on top of that. You get into things like the Georgia Guidestones and prophecies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's an interesting time to be alive. It's an interesting time to be here. It's an interesting time to cultivate your relationship with the so-called reality. Let's get back to this. China's financial markets remain shuttered until February 3rd due to coronavirus fears, according to separate announcements from the Shanghai and Shenzhen exchanges. By the way, it feels like they shanghaied the Chinese New Year this year, didn't they? I mean, Wuhan is a big, big, big center for the setting of the Chinese calendar. And they completely shanghaied it. They hijacked it. So how does this affect? I mean, this is a big deal in China. They are very, very, very connected and bolted into their Lunar New Year cycles. It's a big deal. I mean, it's a really big deal. If you've ever been around somebody who's Chinese and are follow this thing, the red envelopes, and it's a big deal, really big deal. And that didn't happen. So again, in terms of time, right? This is from their calendrical cycle. Yeah, I mean, technically it happened on the new year and on the new moon, which was last weekend, but there were no celebrations, at least not in Wuhan and probably in other provinces of China. And if they were celebrating, they were very mute celebrations. You know, how can you eat delicate bat buns if you've got a mask on? Yeah. So it's another thing here, the time cycle. The time cycle has been disrupted also in China, in Asia. Let's read more here. Oh, by the way, I was in the Chinese New Year parade one year in San Francisco. I considered it to be kind of an honor, actually. I was part of the dragon that went all through downtown San Francisco and wound up in China. The dragon. I was the dragon. I think I was part of the alimentary canal of the dragon. That's where I was sort of situated. And it's kind of cool because you're in there with all these people. Talk about spreading contagion. You're in there with all these people, and you're doing this kind of snake thing along the streets of San Francisco, and then you have a partner, and the partner kind of follows and walks along with you, and then you tap out, and then they come in, and you walk along, and it's really kind of a cool thing. This thing is made of like paper mache or rice paper, right? Because it's got that translucent thing all painted up, and then it's also electric. It's powered by batteries, and there are lights on the inside. So there are lights stringing through the spine of the dragon. So it's kind of illuminated from within. And then when we got to Chinatown, center of Chinatown, and when we got there, that's when all the fireworks started. And just, firecrackers galore, more firecrackers I've ever been around. It was pretty cool, actually. Anyway, one for the record books. The Chinese government may be trying to delay panic selling until it can get the massive outbreak under control. But this strategy is unlikely to work because the sheer impact the virus is already having in the nation's economy. Investors can expect to see a large connection in the Chinese indices when and if trading resumes next Monday. The impact of this crisis is sure to bleed into American markets and may trigger a stock market correction. And then here's another story. The Wuhan coronavirus outbreak intensifies. It's not so secret that the Wuhan coronavirus is getting worse. So far, over 4,000 cases have been confirmed with 106 fatalities. I don't think that they're reporting the actual numbers. They never do. So it's either going to be higher or lower. In my estimation, probably higher. There are over 50 cases outside China, including 5 in the United States. Recently, Germany confirmed its first case of the disease, bringing the total of infected countries to 16. In response to the threat, China has quarantined entire cities. Travel restrictions affect a total population of 60 million people and might be slowing economic activity to a halt in affected areas. Data from the first day of the Chinese New Year shows a significant decline in travel across all platforms. There was a 41.6% decline in civil air travel, 45.5% drop in rail travel, and a 25% drop in road travel. The U.S.-based companies with Chinese subsidiaries are also scaling back their operations. Apparently, people have been flown back to the U.S. that are connected to top-level governmental positions in China. And Mongolia has closed its borders. Think about that. Mongolia, which is basically a subsidiary of China at this point, has closed its borders. It's like, up. Sorry. We're zipping the curtain for now. You can't come in. So this gives you an idea as to what's happening in China. And there's obviously a lot more going on. Plenty more. So I ran across a Reddit page, and this is where it has, you guys may want to, I'll throw this into the chat. You may want to stay with this page. Reddit is certain forums on Reddit can give you intense and dense amounts of information. So here we go. Throw this in there. Hopefully it'll click through. There's the link. You guys have it. Rat year. Rats are very smart. I'm a rat. Rats. Born in the hour of the horse. And I'm a metal rat. Shocking. Okay. Let's go into this here. Look at the Reddit page. Let's see if we can prune out of this. So they've been deleting this apparently. Let's see, what do we have here for your post your best conspiracy theories here. Here's mine. In 2015, there was a test on University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. It was headed by Ralph Barrick. The purpose of the lab test was to manipulate a bat coronavirus to see if it could infect humans. It was discovered that it could. Now, I stumbled across some Benjamin Fulford material last night, and I am definitely bearish on Benjamin Fulford. He's a CIA operative. Gordon Duff, who also works for the CIA, basically said that he was a CIA operative. Gordon Duff has basically said he also works for the CIA. Take everything you read from Gordon Duff with a grain of salt. So he basically outed Fulford as such. And Fulford's been massively wrong about just about everything he's talked about. The good guys, the white hats, just wrong. Certainly compelling on some level, but wrong. And Benjamin Fulford has said that this is not the coronavirus. This is something called the Hitha virus, Hitha, Hitha. And it does come from the bat. It is what's called a zoonotic, meaning it can travel from bat species to bat species. But then they found out that guess what? This thing is transmissible from an animal species to a human. Let's read more, because this is kind of aligning with this Fulford information. So these are all links. One of the people who co-wrote the paper was a Chinese researcher by the name of Jingyi Zhi. Google Scholar shows Xi has written or co-written numerous papers on SARS, Ebola, and coronavirus. Xi works in Wuhan within the Seoul BSL -4 lab in the entire country. So that Wuhan lab was probably the most intense lab, level 4 lab in China. So if they were going to work on creating these viruses, or working with these very intense biocontaminants, that's the place. A Chinese national literally worked on modifying a bat coronavirus to infect humans. 100% confirmed. There are only 70 BSL-4 highest level biosafety research labs in the world. And in China, a country of 1.4 billion people, only one exists. Coincidentally, it happens to be in Wuhan. The people of Wuhan aren't the only Chinese eating stuff like bat soup. Can you fucking believe that, man? Bat soup. Oh, God. I mean, I remember having this revelation, and maybe I was a bit wrong with the revelation now that I think about it. I was at a Chinese restaurant in Oakland, California. It was about 11:30 at night. It was one of those late nights. I was with my buddy, and it was just me and him. Pretty good Chinese restaurant, by the way. Me and him and these other people that were eating there. They happened to be Chinese. And as I walked past their table, I looked at what was on their table. It was unrecognizable. I was like, what is that? What are they really eating? And I shook my head, and I said to my friend, I said, you know what? If there's ever an end of world scenario, I know who's going to survive, because I don't know what they're eating, but they're eating it like it's filet mignon. And I think they're pretty well equipped to survive. Now, apparently, their taste for wild and exotic food has maybe backfired on them now. If this is the case, let me continue to read this. This would be have to be pretty crazy coincidence, since there are at least 9 cities larger than Wuhan, and it could have appeared in any one of them, but it just happened to appear next to the sole bioweapon lab in the entire country. So that lab is apparently about 4 miles away from their open air meat market, where you get all kinds of weird shit. This article was written in 2017 about its construction, and was worried about the potential safety, since this is China's first attempt at such a lab, and it wasn't receiving guidance from the rest of the world on its construction. The article also mentions one of the first viruses it will be working on is SARS. The coronavirus is closely related to SARS from initial inspection. The article warned that this lab would likely be dual use, as China claims it only exists to help research and cure disease, when in reality, China also wants to get in the bioweapon game with the other superpowers. A bioweapon escaping such a lab is an impossible, as anthrax escaped a Soviet bioweapon, a lab in 1979, killing at least 100 people. But the true number is unknown, as they denied it happened at all for more than a decade. Soviets lied, saying it was due to tainted meat. And the KGB destroyed all hospital records and other evidence. They're extremely lucky with which way the wind was blowing. As it blew the other way, spores would have landed in a nearby city, killing hundreds of thousands of people. Boris Yeltsin eventually admitted to the truth of this biological Chernobyl. So this is an article that's provided with links. You can see it. I put the link into the chat. We'll also put the link into the show page. Now, to speculate, I don't think it is a completed bioweapon, as China would likely to have a vaccine ready for it to protect people after deployment against an enemy, and would be likely be far more dangerous. Much more likely is only a partially completed bioweapon, a chimera SARS with other aspects of other viruses thrown in, as they experimented with creating a final product. This is what leaked. Okay, this is an interesting insight, that maybe what happened and what got out isn't really the actual big kahuna, the actual Alamogordo A bomb of bioweapons, which is I guess, kind of heartening, but also scary. Because if you think, well, what happened if they completed this thing? Might even be worse. Let's keep going here. This is also a huge reason for the cover up. If it gets out that China let a bioweapon escape, there will be an international shit show. Unlike what other conspiracy theorists have speculated, I find it extremely doubtful that a bioweapon was released deliberately, as there is no believable motive, and this will inflict terrible damage on China economically. So there's some links and there's some background on the virus itself. Now there's also a theory that part of this virus got stolen out of the U.S. and was then put into that level 4 lab in Wuhan. So there's a lot of entanglement and a lot of cloak and dagger with this, and but the ultimate impact of this is China's economy. Now, the other thing that we have to keep an eye out for is that we haven't gotten any kind of feedback or any kind of news as to how this is affecting Hong Kong. And that's a situation that's been nearly unmanageable for the Chinese government, because the Chinese government are kind of in a weird place with Hong Kong. Like, they don't really need Hong Kong. Hong Kong for the longest period of time was the nerve center for trading in China and in that South Pacific China Sea region. They inherited, it was basically handed over, before the English and a lot of other people got their wealth out of there. Whatever was left over, that's what the Chinese got. And they got control of the marketplace, and they got control of the markets in Hong Kong. But since that happened, which was in 1997, they've developed and built out China in a very different way. And a lot of the stuff that they depended on with Hong Kong doesn't really exist anymore. They have Macau, they have Shanghai, places like that. So Hong Kong's this kind of weird appendage that the Chinese have and have to deal with. And are they really invested in Hong Kong? Probably not as much as they were, but they still need it. And what they really need is they need the obedience. They need people being obedient and following in line, and following the quote unquote leadership, the Chinese leadership. And what they don't want is they don't want that to be its own kind of contagion, the contagion of freedom or the contagion of being self-ruled or self-governed. Boy, that's the big bioweapon, or the human weapon that China has to corral. Now, I haven't seen any news updates, with the exception of they're putting up quarantine areas and they're burning them down in Hong Kong. Uh-oh, I'm about to sneeze here. Give me 1 second. My sneeze had stage fright. It's not happening. But I do have a connection in Hong Kong on Facebook. And somebody was sending me all these updates on what was happening with the protests. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out to them and see if there's anything happening with the coronavirus. And maybe I'll have some more for you guys tomorrow with that. In any case, we're going to see this impact the Chinese markets. It's happening. And that's a big deal. Because if the Chinese markets have this major sell-off and there's no confidence in their consumer division, because that's the other thing that China has done, is that they were basically getting all this money, right, from the outsourcing and the manufacturing and providing products for the rest of the world. We know this. This is not a high math or anything. But around 10 years ago, they started to look at, well, how can we make sure that we're not only growing the economy globally, but we're growing the economy internally? How can we empower the Chinese consumer to be able to have purchasing power and buying power, because that would also ensure a level of prosperity for Chinese business. And that's where the equation got started to get very tricky for China. Because if you have a consumer class who has purchasing power and can buy the stuff that they're selling in other places of the world, it changes the mentality and it changes the mindset. And within a generation, you could have a very, very different group of individuals, very different group of individuals. And they may be not as invested in the governing model that China has put together, and not based on the Cultural Revolution and Mao and the whole top-down thing. Because when you introduce things like capitalism and prosperity and commercial goods, it changes. It changes the mindset of people. I was reading this piece today about poverty. Well, it wasn't even a piece. I didn't read it. It just ran across my screen. And how poverty, or even living paycheck to paycheck and having to deal with that, creates its own level of PTSD. And I know a lot of you can relate to this. You can relate to it. And this is why I think the AOCs of the world, or the Bernies of the world, have people that are very interested in what they're doing. And I'm not backing them. I'm just giving you my perspective. I can totally see it, because there are a lot of people that live just so close to the bone. They're one paycheck or one missed payment or two away from living in their cars. And how stressful is that? How utterly stressful is that? And how does that affect other parts of their lives? It's huge. When you deal with poverty, and we've been dealing with generational poverty in this country for a very long time. And I've talked about this in the past, how the Great Depression was one of the worst things that ever happened to the United States. Worse than World War II, worse than World War I, just bad all the way around. Because what happened with the Great Depression is it set in place this wave of people having to deal with poverty, real close to the bone poverty, soup kitchens, soup lines, bread lines, no work, all because of a manufactured crisis, which was the stock market crash. And how that affected families, and then how that affected the family of families, down the line. And there's this chain reaction effect. And there's the immediate and visceral reaction to it. And then there's the genetic component, because this trauma is based on genetically from generation to generation to generation. And we don't know what happens or how those genes or those chromosomes get triggered. And then all of a sudden you're dealing with something that happened 3 or 4 generations ago that's being passed on through the emotional sine wave of every successive generation. And my parents' parents went through that. They came from poverty, like hard stuff, man, really hard stuff. They went through hard times. And in both cases, with my father and my mother, there wasn't a lot on the table, and there wasn't a lot on the table in terms of love and support. And he, for my father, maybe a little bit more than my mother, because he got it from his extended family. Like his grandparents loved him, and my grandmother had 2 other sisters, and they loved him dearly. So he got some of that. But the financial piece was quite evident. And so they grew up, and they're not alone. I mean, this is not an uncommon story. And so we have this generation after generation dealing with the seismic effect of the shock waves of the Great Depression. And it's horrible, absolutely horrible. And just as and this is kind of where I'm going now, kind of this next piece. And just as we're about to get on our feet, right? We're just, we're getting on that board. We're starting to surf that wave. Guess what happens? Get knocked off the board. And it's usually some kind of artificially inflicted trauma or event or crisis. And I'll give you an example. The biggest hyper prosperity in the United States, and possibly the world, was the late 1950s and early 1960s. If you look at the 1950s, we come out of the war and we come home and there's like massive industrialization, massive, happening both in the United States, in Japan, and in Germany because of the Marshall Plan. Marshall Plan, we got to rebuild Japan, and that's the first wave of outsourcing. But there's also still a lot of manufacturing facilities here, and then Germany got rebuilt very quickly. Like this is what always happens in Germany after World War One. They went through the Weimar Republic. I can't believe some of these documentaries that try to sell that the Weimar Republic was undermined. That it was told that they never had a chance. The Weimar Republic was shit. It was a shit form of government. And what happened in the aftermath of World War One and the Treaty of Versailles was devastating. And again, it's cultural trauma, just down the line. Even after World War One, Germany got rebuilt very quickly, thanks to American dollars, thanks to English dollars. After World War II, there was a massive cratering, but again, the Germans got built up very quickly. You have Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen, and there was a big tech boom in Germany. The Germans were ahead even after the war. They were always building the best speakers and really the high-end audio stuff. It was all German stuff. The lower end audio or middle end audio eventually reached up to higher end, became the Japanese. So it's really interesting that these two countries that we fought against, theoretically, became these countries that were real boons to the 20th century economy. I mean, look at the impact of the Volkswagen. The freaking Volkswagen was everywhere. It was everywhere. This is from a country that just a few years earlier was basically on its hands and knees and getting essentially sodomized by the Russians. That's a whole other story. But this is what happens. In the 50s were really, really, really abundant and wealthy. And then we have the 1960s, the death of Kennedy. There's still some buying power. Land was really cheap. Buildings were really cheap. If you were a boomer or you were somebody that was a Pluto and Cancer generation, that was the time to buy. Get the resources, make it happen. Even the 70s, if you had some generational money, you could get good deals in the 70s. But in the 70s, we have incredibly high interest rates. And here's where it gets artificially screwed. We have Paul Volcker with 23% interest rates or something like it. It was really outrageously high. What is the interest rate now? It's like we've had negative interest rates or zero. Think about the 1970s. You couldn't get a decent loan, and if you did, it was like usury on steroids. So there was always, and then the 70s, of course, were fraught with all kinds of crises. The oil crisis, huge, again, artificially stimulated. We had Iran in the 1970s, 1977 to be precise. A lot of things that happened during the 1970s. We had Watergate. It was just the hammer time. But this is what happens. You get to a level of prosperity, and then all of a sudden, these cycles come in, and then they wipe things out. And at some point, the big cycles come in, and we have what's called the reset. And I think what we're looking at here is we're looking at the first steps of the reset. And I've been talking about the reset for a while, and there are different versions of the reset. So I redefined the reset as it related to Tartaria and basically what John Levi. By the way, if you're not following John Levi, what he's done now is he's shifting his material, and he's basically saying who are the controllers of the world. This is going to be very interesting to see what happens to him and his channel moving forward. And he's looking at, well, who controls the resets? Who controlled the last reset? Who controlled this version or model of history? Who did it and why and how? So the other version of the reset that a lot of people talk about is the financial reset. And that financial reset, I think we're kind of looking at it, and I think we're witnessing the first stages of the financial reset, especially if China continues its downward trend with its market, its downward trend with its manufacturing, it will have a massive effect on the rest of the world. Now, you can sit here and say, well, it's all bullshit and it's all being created. Well, guess what? You're still going to have to deal with it. It doesn't matter if you somehow in your mind think, well, this is not real and that's not the truth. You're still going to have to deal with it. You're still going to have to deal with the effects of this, which I think is a really important piece of information. And I'm not saying this to be a fearmonger. I'm not. What we're trying to do is untangle reality. So it looks like we're on the precipice. It feels that way. We have to see how this thing unfolds, obviously. But it feels like we're on the precipice of the financial reset. And if that's the case, remember, we got Uranus in Taurus, which has to do with the radical reorientation of resources globally. That's Taurus. So if we're going through this reset, then what's going to be on the other side? Well, what's going to be on the other side is maybe worst case scenario, global government, maybe the entire planet is reconfigured, realigned, redefined. There is a one world currency, that whole shit show, and that you've got to sign up in order to be a part of it. I mean, that's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario is that there's a reset that happens and there's so much chaos in the reset phase that they can't manage it and they can't control how the reset is going to go. Unlike the last time, and I say the last time, meaning the theoretical Tartarian time, where it seemed to be quite controllable. And then in recent memory, of course, the reset of the United States with the Great Depression and various other resets, psychological resets, cultural resets, spiritual resets. We see these all the time. It's been happening all throughout the 20th century. And I think the most difficult thing for people is that people need consistency. People need consistency and they need constancy. And that's one of the things that I've learned by doing the show 3 days a week and then the Friday Forecast and then the Sunday night show is to show up and to be consistent and constant. And we all need it. If you think of a child, consistency and constancy are really important. Humans thrive on it. It's like a nutrient. In astrology, we get into the fixed realm of astrology, the thing that shows up every single day, right? But in a time of great fluidity, in a time when Taurus, which is a fixed sign, is getting its cage rattled by Uranus, fixity is not guaranteed. Consistency and constancy are not guaranteed. And then we're going through this very cardinal phase, initiatory phase, with Pluto in Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn, Jupiter in Capricorn, high cardinal energy, massive cardinal energy. So we have basically from Saturn to Pluto, right? Saturn cardinal, Jupiter cardinal. We get into Neptune, there's a little mutability there. Uranus fixed, but not traditionally fixed, right? Because Uranus is a fixed planet, which means that it's always going to be fixed in its ability to be disruptive. And with Taurus, we're dealing with things like bodies and landmass and resources and money. So that's fixed. And then we get out to Pluto, we have cardinal. So we have cardinal, Neptune, mutable, Uranus, right now fixed, and then cardinal. So we have a lot of cardinal energy that's initiating things. And we have the one mutable factor, which is Neptune. And Neptune in Pisces represents the spirit. So how do you get through this time? How can you navigate this intense Saturnian initiatory cardinal period that we're in? While the fixity and the constancy, the consistency is going to be seismic and spiking all the time. Well, it's going to be through Neptune and Pisces. And this is where, being fluid, being mutable, and being able to move and kind of ride these rising tides is very important. Of course, Neptune and Pisces represents the spirit as well. And you've got to be able to, find that spiritual signal inside of yourself. And the thing that I've been preaching for, the last couple of years. Not that I'm, some kind of major reformer in this area, but if you're not dealing with lucidity and clarity and reality, or so-called reality right now, you're going to have a much harder time. Much harder time. And I know there are people who function very well on things like cannabis. So I'm not here to demonize those people. And if that's your soma and it allows you to function, some people have high degree of social anxiety disorder and they use cannabis in order to be in the world. I get that. I understand that. But if you have anything that you have a habituated relationship with now, you better check that out. You better make sure that you are like clear on your habituations. Because what happens if the things that you're habituated with aren't there anymore? I mean, let's say the supply chain breaks down or it's just not available. How are you going to do with your habituations at that point? You're going to freak out. You're going to freak out. I mean, we are no longer in Dionysian land. We are in the Apollonian time. This is the clear light of the sun. This is where we are. So if you want to be able to get through this time, I think through Neptune and Pisces, you're going to have to really be clear, be really clear, because that clarity will allow you to reach higher levels. This is the way it is. Reach higher levels in your spirit and your connection with the Logos. I like how Michael Jones says Logos. I haven't seen Michael on YouTube for a while. I wonder what he's up to. Anyway, these are very interesting times. I think I'm going to skip over the Kobe stuff. Apparently, Vanessa Bryan is supposed to be on Ellen today. Ellen. Isn't that an interesting name? Ellen. L being the Elohim. Right? L also being connected with Lord Saturn. LN. Degenerous. Anyway, I'm going to hold off on the Kobe stuff today. And I'll put I've got some really interesting things. Krista, who was very close to Tracy Twyman, sent me some stuff last night that has to do with one of the families, the Mauser family. I'm going to save it for tomorrow. And I'm going to build it up. I'm going to put some stuff together, some graphics together. I got the information kind of later last night, and I want to do it justice because it's kind of mind blowing. So I'll save that for tomorrow. A little bit of a tease. But I do think that we need to be able to stay fluid. You got to stay fluid. Stay fluid with your spirit, and really look at your habituation, your patterns, your cycles. Like what are you addicted to? Because that stuff's got to. We're gonna have to deal with that, man. We have to wipe that away, brush it away. And the one thing about Capricorn is it can be very helpful to that end. It's just like, oh, done. I'm the CEO of my own body. I'm the CEO of my own experience. I'm cutting this out. And these are the important choices and decisions we have to make as well. So in order to get through this deeply initiatory time, where constancy and consistency is not a given based on the radical dispensation of these Uranian energies through Taurus, Neptune is ironically going to be the carrier. And Neptune is also has to do with this idea that reality has been this kind of fuzzy world over the last few years. I mean, you go back and you look at, the transit of Saturn through Sagittarius and then Jupiter through Sagittarius. That's what 4 years of squares to Neptune, 4 years worth of squares to reality. And that stuff is cumulative. So just a few little tips to be able to get through these times. All right, let me check in with you guys. Let's see where you're at. See what you have to say. Oh my God, they killed Kobe. Did anyone see the Grammys freak show? No. I miss Tracy. Ellen be Helen. Yes, people cannot deal with adversity at all now. Got to get rid of the greedy ones. No sound. I went through Robert Funeral when you dropped Monday. Let's see what else we have. Steve, Steve, I got to get back in touch with you. I'm sorry I missed Monday. I've been super busy. Likely that prophecy was written by those who are fulfilling it. Uranus and Taurus here in Illinois, they have AI telling the governor the grower co-op when to plant. I used to feel I had a kick me sign on my back. Debt forgiveness would be the best option, like the JEWS do for their own. It's an interesting comment. Debt forgiveness would be great. That's what the Jubilee was all about. You'd reach a certain level of debt accumulation, and then we're going to forgive the debt, because if people are strapped to debt so much, they become inoperable. And the so-called rulers of the world know this. They become inoperable. How can they be functioning members of society, meaningful slaves, right? Because if they're saddled with too much debt, then the morale is low, you get low production. So at some point, you have to let up on it so that it can reinvigorate the masses. They can get back to the business of making their rulers even more rich than before. So there is a social mechanism for that. Total social mechanism. Here's the other side of all of this, is that people are waking up. And the waking up process is taking place on a planetary level. And this is when it's the most critical. This is when people are the most vulnerable to these quote unquote resets. It's happened tons of times in the past. Tons of times. Oh, look, they're getting a little too abundant. They're getting a little too provident. They're getting a little too big for their britches. Well, we got to do something about that now, don't we? Oh, yeah. And we're hip to that too. Absolutely hip to that too. We're in that time right now. Strengthen your body, strengthen your mind, strengthen your spirit. These are different times, right? Back when they were doing the resets, a lot of the time we were kind of oblivious, although there were always people who have been wide and awake. Like, we're not the first generation that has come to this kind of precipice, this crossing the road, and seeing what's going on. It has been going on for a very long time. There have always been individuals who have spoken the truth and revealed things. The challenge is that the masses were not quite there. Although you'd be surprised with some, every now and then, like for instance, FDR, we look at FDR now and say, oh, FDR. He was vilified, man. He was totally vilified. Woodrow Wilson was vilified. Woodrow Wilson had to explain his reasoning to get into the war, World War I, and how important it was and all that bullshit. But back then, specifically with Roosevelt, he was not well liked. People looked around and said, motherfucker's a communist. He's a commie. And he just scoffed at people. Scoffed at people. And what did he institute? Well, he saved, theoretically, America by creating the WPA, which was basically making government bigger and creating more of kind of a socialist state entity, or socialist state entities with these various appendages of the government. Big government started during FDR, an Aquarian, by the way. So we're not the only people. The difference now is the number and the multitude. The number and the multitude of the amount of people are waking up. And when that happens, the people that are in quote unquote control of this so-called reality, okay, well, let's just start over. You ever play like a board game with a kid and you're kicking their ass on a board game, which you probably shouldn't be doing. But if your kid is really competitive and you're really competitive, and and even if you're not really competitive, sometimes you're kind of like dialing it down. The kid gets frustrated and throws the board up, whatever the board game is. Like, okay, well, this kind of we're getting to that point here. This is different though. This is a different experience in a different time, and the amount of conscious awareness that we have collectively is very, very different. So keep doing your thing. Watch your habituation. Watch your thoughts as well. Very important. This is an important. Um, it's an important piece that we all have to wrap our heads around, is watching our thoughts. Because what we've been seeing and what part of the discussion is with the Kobe stuff, it's like how we create reality. Whether it's predictive programming or whether it's vision boards, or these things are very, 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 very powerful. Very powerful. So watch your thoughts, watch what you're creating, watch what you're visualizing. And if you're going to visualize and create something with your thoughts, make sure it's for the best, with the best intention and serving the most people that it can serve in your life. Be very broad and generous with your thoughts and intentions and your mindfulness. Harvest the best of your thoughts. I think that's really important. And don't freak out. Do not freak out. That's the most important thing that we can, again, begin to embrace. Stay cool, stay calm, take care of your body, take care of your mind, take care of your spirit. And if you have that, if you got your own oxygen mask on, then you can take care of the other people in your life. So find that oxygen mask, which is spirit, right? Breath is spirit. Find that oxygen mask and get it affixed so that you can take care of yourself and help others. This is where we are. Okay. And we'll get through this. Trust me. We will get through this. And whatever it is on the other side will be infinitely more, at least interesting, and hopefully even better. Okay. I'll hold that thought because there's so many people waking up. So many people waking up. And it's shifting. It's shifting the frequency here. And don't ever forget that. Right? Don't ever forget it. You're part of something profound. Not just a once in a lifetime experience. This is a planetary, universal, trans matrix experience that you're involved in right now. This is big shit. Really big shit. So hang in there, stay cool, stay healthy, get your oxygen mask on, and try to align yourself with the Logos rising. All right? All right, I'm Robert Phoenix. If you like the show, and I'll get to the Kobe stuff tomorrow. I want to see what happens. Because I do believe this whole Kobe thing is about loosh and harvesting emotion, amongst a few other things. I'm going to get to some of that tomorrow. I'm also going to get into Kanye tomorrow. There's a very interesting Kanye and Kim have become religious now. I'll talk more about that tomorrow. Kim has become Orthodox, Armenian Orthodox. She took her kids to get baptized. There's actual pictures of their kids getting baptized by this Orthodox priest. And of course, Kanye dropped this record, Jesus is King. I don't trust Kanye, but that's okay. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow and what that looks like and what it might signify and mean. So in the meantime, you can go to robertphoenix.com. On my right-hand column, the sidebar, as they call it, I have a link at the top. You can subscribe to this. I've got 3 tiers, 5, 10, 20, pretty self-explanatory about what you get when you subscribe. I'll have the schedule of the webinars out by this weekend. And for all of you who signed up for who bought my astrological course within really the last 4 to 5 months, I think I'm going to do my first webinar on Saturday. I know it's short notice, but you'll be able to get it. I'll save it. So I'll have news for that over on the 11th House on Facebook. So if you haven't joined the 11th House on Facebook, I urge you. It's really starting to hum. It's totally starting to hum, that group. We got a bunch of new people in, really smart. They're hungry for content. Really interesting people. So you want to be a part of that. To the best of our ability, because Facebook is very limiting at times when you want to put in information. They're so algorithmic and bot oriented in real time that when you put an actual link in that you want to share, they've already got a whole list of websites and that they're not going to allow. Okay, so we're in this kind of cat and mouse game. What happened for a while with Facebook. Anyway, let me just go back into Chatlandia one more time, see where we're at. No Facebook. Thank you, Robert. Like your shirt, a great show. Thanks, Mary. Everybody dance. You know, that's a really good comment. Everybody dance. Maybe I'll talk about that tomorrow. We need more dancing. And in the time of heaviness, right? The heaviness of Saturn, the heaviness of Capricorn, the gravity of the time that we're in, find some time to dance and have some fun. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to set what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. You've been watching and being a part of 15 Minutes of Flame. I'll be back tomorrow.